Here's a quiet confession buried beneath every supermarket shelf and every flawless row of identical produce. We traded edible astonishment for the convenience of a barcode. We ripped out living time capsules, varieties that shimmered like scattered treasure, and replaced them with crops engineered for a long truck ride in a uniform silhouette. Now, those discarded originals command sums that would make a venture capitalist blush. Corn that fractures light into stained glass brilliance. Tomatoes heavy enough to lift a family out of financial ruin. Watermelons painted with a private galaxy that vanished for a generation. Today on my channel, we are digging into the soil of the forgotten. We are not visiting a sterile museum. We are cracking open the living vaults of seed libraries and backyard plots where flavor exists at a volume knob set to 11. And here is the twist that should make you lean forward. This is not a menu reserved for Michelin-starred kitchens. This is an open invitation. Every single one of these misplaced marvels can take root in the dirt right outside your back door. Imagine the act of peeling back a corn husk and discovering the interior of a geode. Not yellow feed grain, but a mosaic of translucent gemstones. Glass gem corn is not merely a crop. It functions as a testament to the beautiful chaos of human curiosity. This particular brand of gorgeous madness stems from a man named Carl Barnes, an Oklahoman of Cherokee lineage who, during the 1980s, started playing matchmaker with ancestral seeds. He was not in a lab coat. He was in the dirt, crossing Pawnee miniature popcorn with Osage red flour and Cherokee blue corn. What emerged looked less like food and more like a curated collection of polished amber, amethyst, and jade. Each individual cob presents a fingerprint of color so distinct it defies replication. When high-resolution images of this corn first flooded the internet in 2012, it became the banner image for a quiet rebellion. Yet, glass gem is not merely a prop for a photo backdrop. As a flint corn, it grinds down into a polenta that carries a smoky, nutty depth so complex it renders the average corn chip a bland piece of cardboard by direct comparison. So why did the machinery of big agriculture spit this out? The answer is a cold, hard stopwatch. It demands roughly 110 days to reach maturity. It refuses to look the same from row to row. In a system that worships the twin gods of speed and sameness, glass gem was an eccentric hermit. Commercial viability slammed the door, but seed keepers held a window open, safeguarding not just a grain, but a strand of indigenous agricultural intellect. While glass gem dazzles the eye, our next entry conquered the wallet. Deep in the hunger pangs of the Great Depression, when currency moved slower than molasses in January, an untrained mechanic in West Virginia performed an economic miracle with nothing but pollen and patience. Marshall Cletus Biles, known around the shop as Radiator Charlie, achieved what corporate breeding programs could only dream of. He created a tomato so robust, so obscenely heavy with flesh, that it erased the red ink from his property deed. Working without a degree or a budget, using a baby's ear syringe to ferry pollen between blooms, Charlie spent 6 relentless seasons crossing 4 distinct plants. The offspring was a behemoth. Individual fruits tipped the scales at nearly 4 pounds. The interior possessed a sweet, low-acid density that older gardeners simply describe as the way tomatoes used to taste. Charlie priced his seedlings at a premium, $1 per plant, during a time when $1 was a day's wage. Yet buyers flocked from neighboring states. Within half a dozen years, the $6,000 owed on his house was gone. But the mortgage lifter's reign was temporary. Industrial shipping requires concrete, not velvet. These giants bruised if you looked at them wrong. They ripened on their own sweet schedule, not the schedule of a freight train. So they vanished from the public square, kept alive only by those who valued the flavor of financial freedom over the flavor of cardboard. The cruel joke of our current era? The same fragile, irregular traits that made mortgage lifters a commercial pariah are exactly what now fetch a premium price at the farmer's stand. Then there are disappearances that feel less like economics and more like a magician's final trick. The Moon and Stars watermelon is a fruit that looks like it fell out of orbit. Its dark green rind acts as a night sky for splashes of bright yellow lunar crescents and a dusting of tiny stellar specks. By the time disco music faded, This celestial oddity had become a rumor, whispered over garden fences. Introduced in the roaring 20s as sun, moon, and stars, it was outmuscled by the thick-skinned hybrids bred to survive a cross-country trip. By the 1970s, it was an apparition, a ghost story of a flavor so intensely floral and sweet that it made modern melon taste like ice water. Then in the 80s, a man named Merle Van Doren did what every treasure hunter dreams of. Scouring the rural roads of Missouri, he spotted a field that looked like a dreamscape. A single grower, clinging to a tradition passed down through bloodlines, still had them. Merle secured the seeds and hand-delivered them to the Seed Savers Exchange in 1987, effectively pulling the constellation back from the void. The variety was resurrected by memory and muscle, not by money. While that rescue was dramatic, some vegetables didn't just get lost, they moved empires. The purple-top turnip, with its regal violet collar and creamy white base, is a vegetable with a secret identity as an architect of the modern world. It arrived on American shores from France around 1835, but its resume was already legendary. In the 18th century, a British aristocrat known as Turnip Townsend weaponized this humble root in a four-field crop rotation system. That system fueled livestock through the winter, which in turn fueled the exploding human population that built the Industrial Revolution. The purple top variety provided a 1-2 punch, a peppery bite when raw that mellowed into a buttery softness when cooked, along with nutrient-dense greens for the pot. So what happened? The potato. The potato charmed the world, and the turnip was demoted to the status of poverty food and hog slop. A world-changing staple that once underpinned the growth of cities became a symbol of hardship and a relic of a leaner, hungrier past. From European fields, we pivot to a flavor steeped in the deep soil of the Cherokee Nation. The Cherokee purple tomato looks like a bruise in the best possible way. Its skin shifts between dusky rose and dark mahogany, and its interior bleeds a deep, wine-soaked red. This is not the airbrushed orb of supermarket fame. This is a challenge to everything modern agronomy preaches. Where the industry demands perfect spheres, Cherokee purple offers ribs and pleats. Where they demand uniform redness, this fruit offers a spectrum of shadow. Yet, take a bite, and you will find yourself in the presence of what many connoisseurs consider the Mount Rushmore of tomato flavor. It is rich, it is smoky, it possesses a lingering complexity that hovers between sweet and a whisper of smoke. Its journey toward the brink of nothingness mirrors a wider erasure. As farming became about durable skins and visual appeal, the varieties bred purely for the pleasure of the tongue were left to wither, but seed-saving networks held firm. Cherokee purple now stands as a monument to something larger: the critical importance of preserving indigenous agricultural wisdom and the explosive, messy flavor that happens when we breed for joy instead of profit. If Cherokee purple is the soulful blues of the garden, the next offering is a Dutch Renaissance painting made edible. Emerging from the sophisticated horticulture of 17th century Netherlands, dragon-tongue beans are almost too artistic to throw into a skillet. These flat, stringless pods stretch out 6 to 7 inches in length, but it is the coloring that steals your breath. They are creamy pale yellow, overlaid with vivid purple streaks that look like they were applied with a fine sable brush. Here is the parlor trick, though. The instant you apply heat, those dramatic purple brush strokes vanish completely. They melt away, leaving behind a tender, nutty, and exceptionally sweet bean. Victorian gardeners adored this duality. They could plant them in the flower border for the show, and then harvest them for the plate. But the age of mechanization had no patience for such theatrics. Machines cannot appreciate the transient beauty of a disappearing stripe. They want green beans that all snap at the exact same height. Dragon tongue was a casualty of the assembly line. Ascending high into the thin air of the Andes, we encounter a different kind of heat. The Aji Lemon Drop is a pepper that tastes like a bolt of spiced citrus lightning. Cultivated on the volcanic slopes of Peru since roughly 400 years before the Common Era, this wrinkled, bright yellow pod packs a flavor profile so vivid it rewires your senses. It delivers a clean, sharp floral hit of lemon zest, followed by a warming glow that is present but never punishes. It is the secret weapon behind the most authentic ceviche. Yet when Spanish ships carried the New World's bounty back to Europe, they selected for the familiar and the mild. The aromatic complexity of the lemon drop was left behind, a regional footnote ignored by global commerce. Centuries later, industrial standardization tightened that noose further, shrinking the world's pepper palette to a few boring staples. Its recent resurgence among chefs isn't just a trend, it's an archaeological dig for flavor we almost paved over entirely. Sometimes survival depends on a journey across a vast ocean. In 1873, a community of Mennonite refugees fleeing persecution in Ukraine packed their wagons. Among their most guarded possessions were not jewels or deeds, but paper sacks of wheat kernels. That wheat, known as Turkey red, would go on to paint the Great Plains in shades of gold and, more importantly, flavor. This was a tall wheat, standing 4 to 5 feet high, with a root system that burrowed deep to find moisture in the driest years. When it was milled fresh, the flour carried a natural spice cabinet of aroma, hints of caraway, a whisper of cinnamon. It baked bread that sang. By the dawn of the 20th century, virtually all of the 5 million acres of Kansas wheat were anchored by Turkey red. It is not hyperbole to say this single variety cemented America's place as the breadbasket to the world. And then we sacrificed it on the altar of modernity. Plant breeders developed dwarf varieties that could stand up to wind and heavy nitrogen. They ripened all at once, making harvest a simple math equation. Turkey red, with its stubborn height and variable schedule, became an antique. We traded the inherent flavor of caraway and cinnamon for a flour so bland we now need to add artificial conditioners just to make it taste like something. In 1902, the Burpee Seed Company introduced an eggplant that looked like polished onyx. They called it Black Beauty. This glossy, deep purple fruit was the standard bearer of Victorian elegance. It has the classic, heavy teardrop silhouette and a skin so shiny you could almost check your reflection. Each plant bears 4 to 6 substantial fruits weighing 1 to 2 pounds. The flesh inside is creamy, dense, and devoid of that sharp, unpleasant bitterness that plagues so many modern varieties. For the majority of the 20th century, Black Beauty dominated the garden patch. Its texture was supreme. It was less watery, more substantial, the perfect canvas for parmesan or baba ganoush. But as with all these stories, the bottom line intervened. Hybrids that pumped out more fruit per square foot and sat on a shelf for weeks without wrinkling shoved Black Beauty aside. Efficiency won. Taste took the silver medal. Our journey through the gardens lost and found ends with a curveball. A cucumber that masquerades as a citrus fruit. Lemon cucumbers emerged from the Victorian era's obsession with the curious and the charming. Introduced in the 1890s, these round, tennis ball-sized fruits are bright yellow and as cute as a button, but their appeal is more than visual charm. Unlike the thick, bitter hides of modern green cucumbers, the lemon cucumber wears a tender, thin skin that never requires peeling. The flesh is crisp, sweet, and entirely free of the digestive regret that sometimes comes with its greener cousins. They are perfect for snacking whole or tucking into a jar of brine. Their near disappearance speaks volumes about a food system that demands straight lines and stackable boxes. Quirky spheres do not pack efficiently on a pallet, so they were left in the compost heap of history. So where does this leave us? The narrative of these forgotten foods is not a tragedy of complete extinction. It is a more complicated modern fable about compromise. We traded the symphony of genetic diversity for the monotone hum of supply chain efficiency. We swapped mortgage-lifting flavor for shelf-stable blandness. But here is the crucial detail. The flavors did not disappear. They have been sitting there, dormant and patient, cataloged in heirloom listings, swapped between neighbors at community seed events, and nurtured by stubborn, beautiful humans who refuse to let the good stuff die. Growing these plants is not merely an act of nostalgia or a retro gardening hobby. It is an active, radical reclamation of our right to taste, our right to variety, and our control over the very act of eating. Which of these wandering wonders would you most want to slice open and experience? Have you been secretly tending to a rare varietal that deserves a spotlight? We want the dirt on your garden stories down in the comments section. And if this episode planted a seed of curiosity, please take a second to hit the like button for my channel. Subscribe to ensure you never miss an excavation, and share this with a friend who is still convinced that all tomatoes were created equal. This has been a deep dive into the roots of real flavor.